Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. Both of us have been out of town, so it has been 2 weeks since you've seen us on camera here. No fights last weekend, but we do return for UFC Vegas 62, headlined by Grasso taking on Viviane Araujo at women's 125 pounds. In the co-main event, we got veteran Cub Swanson dropping down to 135 pounds for the first time, taking on Jonathan Martinez in what should be a good co-main event. We got a total of 12 fights scheduled for this Saturday, some sneaky good ones scattered throughout, but UFC easily saving all their star power for next weekend in UFC 280, which should be phenomenal. Before we get into it, do us a quick favor if you haven't liked the video, sub to the channel yet, throw us a comment in there who you got in some of these big fights this Saturday. We did have a week off, but we still want to recap how we finished on the Dern versus Jonan card. Profitable for us both. Let you quickly go through some of those reads we had.
Yeah, I'm back in the cap again, and always a pleasure for both going positive. We'll take a look at your card first. You made some money fading the old guys, man. You had Randy Brown and Ilir Latifi, both facing guys over 40 years of age, and you came out profitable with your straight picks, hitting both of them. Looking down the rest of your card, you had Jocko wins by decision. He didn't really show up, but to make up for it, you had Zhao Yanan wins by decision only. You knew the read was there. It was a good pick at minus 135 and a pretty safe one at that. You knew if she could avoid that submission, it was likely that she was going to be the round winner. And you came out plus 4.25 units. Huge night for you. Looking over to my card, I had one straight pick. It was Mike Davis over Slava Claus. Easy win, but dang, I was so close to hitting Davis by TKO at plus 350. He wanted it. He was trying. Ref didn't want to give it to him too easily. Looking down, I had Brown inside the distance. You know, I thought that might have been the play, but Trinaldo is notorious for being very durable, and Brown just didn't have, decision machine, didn't have the type of finishing upside I thought he did. And then lastly, Randy Costa versus Guido Canetti. Fight doesn't start round 2. We were both on the under there, and that one was obviously going to hit. I ended up the night plus 0.94 units, and hope that we can keep the ball rolling.
Yes, sir.
Our main event takes place in the flyweight division with Alexa Grasso taking on Viviane Araujo. I think this fight has possible title implications, at least for the Alexa Grasso side here. Grasso, known for her striking more or less, she does have some grappling deficiencies, but as we've seen her in her career develop her game, she's definitely shown in these last 3 bouts that she's making steady improvements. And at only 29 years old, it's a great time for her to get hot. Viviane Araujo, very powerful for the division. She has a BJJ black belt. And in the past, we've seen her kind of slow down in fights, and I think that's probably my biggest knock on her. Outside of that, she does have a lot of tools that can be dangerous for her opponents, and at the same time, kind of to her own detriment. She throws with a lot of power, like I've already said, and her grappling, while it is good, it uses a lot of strength to get it done. And I think with Grasso kind of showing over the course of her career that as the fight goes, she kind of picks up her reads. She doesn't stop with the volume. Those are all things that I think will eventually kind of give her the win in this matchup. But I like to draw parallels to the Caitlin Chookagian fight with Viviane Araujo, where, you know, Chook kind of took that first round to download the information. And in my head, that's the toughest round to call. Then in the second round, we see the actual first grappling exchange. And after about 2 minutes in mount, Araujo is completely gassed. And at that point, it's tough for her to pick up her hands. Chook continues with the technique in her striking. And over the course of time, Viviane becomes super predictable with her head movement and starts to get tagged. I'll acknowledge that Vivi's gas tank looked a whole lot better in the Lee fight that she was just in. But truthfully, I don't think that Grasso's going to slow down the same way that Lee did. And Grasso's proved that she has a very good chin on her. The cardio has never been an issue. And as far as being a counter puncher, I think that this is a perfect style matchup for her, because Vivi's known to just push forward. Even if she is tired, she's just continually pushing forward. And Grasso throws down the middle so much. I think that she's going to end up finding the head of Araujo the later this fight goes on. So as far as picking a side for this fight, I'm having a difficult time choosing who I want. I think the finishing upside early is on Araujo's side. But I do think that there's a lot of finishing upside for Grasso down the line. So I'm eyeballing that fight doesn't go the distance. I see a world where Araujo has a super big physical advantage and is able to capitalize on that early, locking her up in a submission while they're still dry. But if we don't see the finish and the fight extends, I think that crisp boxing of Grasso is going to take over, and we could possibly see her first UFC career knockout. That's sitting at plus 165, and that's kind of how I'm looking at this fight. I've also noticed on tape that Vivi can get a little bit of a cheater in there. She likes to grab the cage. She likes to grab gloves. And I do think that the point deduction is another place that I'm kind of looking to put a sprinkle on.
It's 5 rounds. It could happen. I think we got a nice little 5-round scrap between these girls, if I'm honestly with you. I lean toward it going a bit toward decision, but I think it's a really close contested fight. Grasso cashed a very easy ticket for us last time out against JoJo. And, dude, for a while I used to kind of I don't want to say not Grasso, but I never thought she would see the top of the division. And moving up to a weight class when she had the grappling deficiencies, I definitely did not think it was going to go good. But I'll be honest with you, she kind of made me eat my words. I think she's vastly improving at a really good rate. She already had the really good clinch game, phenomenal boxing. You talked about her, definitely having the superior gas tank. But entering the prime of her career, man, the camps of having to train hard for Carla Esparza, for Tatiana Suarez, you see her adding takedowns into her game. You see her hitting submission attempts on Macy Barber, going out there taking down JoJo and getting her first submission win. So, you're seeing a girl improving, and it's really easy to back her with your money. And she's found success, even on the defensive grappling side, not remaining on the bottom, finding her way back to the feet. So, her boxing's good. I think she still have the tendency to be, her head moving, it's all right. I still think she kind of stays on the middle a little bit, kind of gets touched up. But her biggest thing is I think she can kind of get bullied and backed up against the cage. And even in the JoJo fight, while JoJo's, coming at her, she definitely gives up the center of the cage, and she gives up ground a whole lot early on. Combine that with the strength, the grappling upside of Vivi, I think there's potential that she easily could win round 1 or round 2 here. Because she's definitely got good boxing and everything as well. More power than I think it is technique, like Grasso has. Big issue you talk about, the unknowns with the gas tank. You see her depleting in round 3 sometimes, and now this is round 5, and she's almost going to be 36 years old next month as well, which is something a lot of people, even I had to kind of take a second look at. She's had single-digit fights in the UFC still. Man, like I said, I think we got a really, really good scrap on our hands. Money line value at plus 192. I'm starting to kind of lean toward value being on Viviane Araujo there. But I like my 4 or 5 decision props a whole lot. And you talked about that finishing upside for Alexa Grasso in rounds 4 and 5. I think there is some there. And what I think she's most likely going to do, win a decision like she has done in the future. So that's sitting at minus 115 on FanDuel right now. The more I kind of break down the fight with you, I think Grasso going to be my official pick as well. I think we got another great fight here in the co-main event. We got Jonathan Martinez welcoming Cub Swanson to the bantamweight division. A move for Cub that, I told you, I don't really know what to make of it, to be honest with you, because you've won 3 of your last 4 fights, and the only fight you lost was a liver shot from Giga in the first minute before the fight ever really even got started. So it's not like you're not finding success late in your career or anything. So I do kind of question the move a little bit. But the biggest thing for me is, where would this fight be lined if it was Jonathan Martinez, who does struggle to make weight at 135? What would it be lined if he's coming up to 145? I think it would be a whole lot much closer of a fight. I think skill-wise, these guys are pretty close. And I think what's got Cub at a plus 182 on BetOnline is just the fact that he's, the one who's 35 plus years old, having to cut this extra weight. And I don't know how much of a factor that's really going to be and be on his skill set until I see the interviews today about him trying to rest his voice. And that's not what I like to see when I did drop a half unit on Cub Swanson. But to me, I just think the guy can hang with this kid on the feet, on the mat. You always see him in great shape, good footwork, good combinations. And, even though he's the natural featherweight here, when I watch these guys on tape, the footwork and stuff of Cub, I think he just looks a little bit faster to me, honestly, still. And then we got to remember that we're a year away from Davey Grant landing a knockout blow on Jonathan Martinez, who, again, has a bad weight cut, has shown some chin deficiencies himself. I did wanted to wait till weigh-ins because of shit like going on in the interview that making me question if I really do want to play Cub. But I saw plus 182. I thought that was wide enough for me to be willing to gamble a half unit on him. So I'm going to take Cub as an underdog. I think you got some different feelings here, though.
I'm looking at this a little bit different, but looking to drop about the same amount, a half unit on the Martinez side. But I'm thinking he's going to find it by finish. I'm kind of worried, just like everybody else, about this Cub Swanson weight cut. I think it's going to be very similar to his teammate, TJ Dillashaw. It's like, why were you cutting to a weight class below when there is no fat to lose when you were at your current weight class? It just doesn't make much sense. 2 weeks removed from his 39th birthday. Yes, he has unorthodox striking like Davy Grant. It's not the same type of striking, but it's at least not conventional techniques. My only reserve with betting Jonathan Martinez inside the distance heavy is that Martinez likes to he doesn't have a lot of sense of urgency for that finish, and that we've seen that in his last 3 wins where it seems like there's multiple times where he has the opportunity to get the finish. He's just not putting the foot on the gas whenever he needs to. Personally, I think that Jonathan Martinez's kicking game is what's going to be the biggest issue for Cub Swanson. Cub, a lot of the time, is at a height disadvantage when he's fighting. This time, they're going to be the same height, so I'm curious to see if Cub is still going to try and use those lunging strikes, which at the end of the day, it's going to be his punches lunging in versus the kicking game, the teep game of Jonathan Martinez. And Cub having those problems with body shots in the past, I think that one of those are going to get right in there to the solar plexus, and I could see Cub getting knocked out, whether it's from a body shot or just cutting too much weight and not having enough water on his brain and getting his lights shut off. I'm definitely leaning Jonathan Martinez, but I'm curious to see weigh-ins to see how they match up physically and to see if Cub or Martinez can even show up for 135 pounds. For my fight of the night, I'll be taking Nick Maximov versus Jacob Malkoun. Both guys, primary wrestlers in their UFC tenure. Malkoun usually goes for that double leg at first, but he'll switch to that high crotch single leg if he can't get to the hips of his opponent. He's in recent fights developed this jab, which, it's pretty good for the 185-pound division, as bad as that is to say. His offensive wrestling is always on point, but I do have concerns about Malkoun's defensive wrestling, which will definitely be tested in this fight. Maximov, also wrestling heavy reliant, usually shoots for the single leg early and often. I'd say he has more weapons on the feet than Malkoun, but none of them are very sharp. He has a good straight right hand and a little bit of a sneaky kicking game, and if he can keep Malkoun thinking about that wrestling, I could definitely see a head kick landing over 15 minutes. I feel like Maximov's stats are a little bit misleading. He has over 5.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. But, take the second to last fight of his against Punahele, for example. When's the last time you saw somebody outscore their opponent on takedowns 11-0 and then get a split decision win? Very often, if anything, it points to his relentlessness, commitment to his game plan of getting the fight to the mat. He completely sells out for that takedown, and that even means if that's, has him winding up in really bad positions where he's down there grabbing at an ankle and not really in a good defensive position. His body language in there isn't great, and sometimes he gets backed up against the fence and you just don't see a setup for those takedowns. I think this fight has the potential to be one of the closest fights of the night because of the style matchup. For the most part, neither guy really offers fight-ending power on the feet, and we know the wrestling exchanges is going to be commonplace for either one of these fighters. So I think we're going to get a back-and-forth wrestling match, and it really will come down to who has the deeper gas tank. Both guys are BJJ brown belts, so I believe that they're going to stay out of trouble for the 15 minutes. The fight goes the distance is a little bit steep at minus 250. At the end of the day, these guys are 185ers and they can shut someone's lights out at any time. I can't get myself to lay the juice there. That being said, the odds are showing us how close this fight looks on paper, nearly being at a pick'em, while also being heavily juiced to go the distance. I think we're in for a treat, which is why I've chose this for my fight of the night. I think officially, I'm going to lean on the Maximov side. Just having a few more tools on the feet might be the difference maker in this fight, but I do think it's going to be an excellent one.
Yeah, I think this is an extremely close fight. Like you talked about, maybe one of the closest on the card. Yeah, I don't know how you come out of here with a comfortable read watching tape. Both guys, their one loss in UFC comes in the first minute of a fight, really before it ever gets started, and every win they have comes from pretty much the same way. It's getting the takedown, mounting up top control, pretty much being a wet blanket for 15 minutes. Neither of them are active with ground and pound. Neither of them really hunt for submissions, and neither of them really had an opportunity to show that striking at all on the feet. So it's hard for me to really tell who the better grappler is of the two. And then sometimes you see fights with two grapplers just end up staying on the feet, so then it makes me second guess who I want to even try to put my money on there. It's just really a toss-up. Like you said, closely competitive fight that probably goes a full 15 minutes. So zero action for me, but if I have to make an official pick, I'm going to lean with Maximov as well. I think he has a little bit better jiu-jitsu, American wrestling background, a little bit of size advantage to go with it all. Nick Maximov ever so slightly. For my fight of the night, I chose Askar Askarov taking on Brandon Royval. Big fight in the flyweight division. Win or two away from these guys fighting for the belt as well. Askarov, if he would have beat Kai France, he would have had the interim title shot chance, and arguably could have walked away with the victory that night. It was his first professional loss, and Kai pretty much got his hand raised off of hyping up the crowd and stuff, in my opinion. And he did land the better shots on the feet, but I think he let the crowd kind of steal that one for him. Askarov, I like this fight for him stylistically a lot. He's a very good Dagestani wrestler who's also developing some skills on the feet, but at flyweight, where it typically is a little bit harder to hold your opponents down, dude, Royval always seems to find a way on his back. He throws a ton of kicks, a ton of unorthodox strikes that can really be to his downfall. You watch Tim Elliott and Rogerio Bontorin just really not have the gas tank later in the rounds to steal the fight and let Royval come back and beat him. And then we see Pantoja and Moreno who actually get Royval out of there on the mat. So, there's 4 of his UFC fights, like 4 of his 6 or 7 UFC fights where this guy's had problems on the mat with top-level competition. And I think it's going to be the same here Saturday, but to his defense, one of the most chaotic fighters on the roster for a flyweight. The guy hardly ever sees the judges' scorecards. Great gas tank, training out of Colorado. Great size at 5'9" for the flyweight division, and can be a serious submission threat in some of the scrambles that he creates. And I expect there to be a lot of grappling in this fight. So who do I favor there? And I think the strength and technicality was on the side of Askar pretty heavily. So I got him at minus 188. He's like minus 260 on the same book now, so I got a ton of closing line value. I like him to easily bank 2 of these 3 rounds, and historically, I've just seen that style cause Royval some issues. So I like my bet on Askar. How do you see this one going down?
I think I like Askar here as well, and I think if it weren't for that controversial win from Kai France, you could have probably added 100 more points on Askarov's money line here. That being said, Askarov's kind of a runt. Just the way that he carries himself, looks in this division. I think that he's just not got the size that he needs to be able to put that Russian heavy wrestling style on somebody. And then you throw in the fact that they're 125ers and he's taking on one of the longest guys in the division. I think, if anything, that he could make this fight close, which is something that I don't want to see. And now we've seen a draw from Askarov and then another close fight from Kai France. I do think that this fight could be closer than we like to see any minus 300 now-ish favorite be. And that's probably why I'm going to lay off. But I do think it's going to be an excellent fight. And Royval's always in a good fight, win or lose. So I'm with you. It's a good fight of the night pick. For my fighter to watch, I'm picking Tatsuro Taira from Japan. He is a undefeated 22-year-old prospect, loads of potential. He's got an amazing build for the flyweight division, and I think that he could present a lot of real problems for the bulk of the division. As we saw in his last fight, he has great fundamentals and a great base for MMA. His grappling transitions are fluid, and his strength is evident, which is unusual for a young prospect. UFC has made it clear that they're trying their best to build this kid up. The Candelario fight was tailor-made for him, from the UFC flying him out months prior, getting him acclimated, the amount of resources they gave to him, and even stylistically, it was all set up for the 30-26 scorecard that ensued. The UFC would really like to tap into that Japanese market, and I think that this is easily their current best opportunity. I'm not looking past Vergara here. He is extremely powerful and will definitely force the fight out of Tatsuro. I'm just not convinced that he's going to pull out yet another huge upset over the UFC's prospect that they're working on here. And that's kind of why he's my fighter to watch. I do think that he is going to get a finish here. I think the UFC would like to see a finish here, and I think that Vergara is aggressive enough that he's going to put himself in situations that Tatsuro will be able to capitalize on over 15 minutes.
I see a Tatsuro submission incoming as well, parlayed with Askarov for plus money. I'd love for him to come through with the victory. For me, fighter to watch, Victor Henry, man, plus 300 to now minus 350. Victor Henry's got a lot to prove to me on Saturday to see if he's really warranted of this price tag against another big veteran name. You know, it looks like the UFC was very impressed with his debut performance because at 35 years old, you know, if he's got to do anything, the time is now. And here they are giving him in what could be one of the most winnable fights in the division, but also be a big name. You got him matched up against Rafael Sunsao, who's 40 years old, on a 4-fight losing streak, finished in 3 of them, but kind of still holds that top 10 spot, you know, and a big name that could propel Victor Henry up there. Dude, in the debut, short notice debut, 397 strikes thrown. Dude looked to be in incredible shape, and I mean, I can only expect even better shape from him here. Outlanded Barcelos every single round, stuffed every single takedown. The combinations, the teep kicks, and the way he was working the body was amazing. The guy had really good footwork, and he's never been finished in full 27 pro fights. He just looked like he did a really good job of rolling with the punches every time Barcelos landed and would fire back with a really clean counter shot. You know, I was one of many who did underestimate him there, and you could maybe even argue at this point in Sunsao's career, it could be a step down from Harney Barcelos. But to me, I just need to sit back and see if Victor Henry can replicate, you know, a performance like last time, because quite a bit of a market overcorrection here, you know.
I'm definitely on the market overcorrection side. Like you said, he has a lot to prove here. With that being such a huge jump in odds, I agree that Sunsao's past his prime, and you do have to go pretty far back to see the good performances. But the fact that Sunsao has proven that he can beat guys like Marlon Moraes and Rob Font says a lot. So it's a huge step up for Henry and a great fighter to watch. All right, so I'm not really going dog hunting too much on this card, so I did kind of have to settle. I'm going with Jacob Malkoun here. Now, he is only a slight dog, and it is a fight that I kind of see as a toss-up, but I will kind of point out some things that I do think Malkoun has going for him, being an underdog. I think that he has a much better developed jab, which at the end of the day, that's usually enough to keep a good wrestler at bay on the feet. And I could definitely see Maximov not finding a way or not being able to get the fight to the mat and then having to rely on his striking. And if Malkoun can get that jab going early, I do think that he could find that timing and keep the fight on the feet. And for what it's worth, I think that he's a decent dog. Although I'm kind of picking Maximov to get the win here, I do think that Malkoun will fight for his price tag here.
Yeah, I'm with you. This week was a really hard one to pick an underdog that you can make a solid case for, but rather that it's just going to be a damn close fight. I think that's what I'm going to have to do here as well with Viviane Araujo, who I was almost content with at plus 160 at the beginning of the week, plus 192 now sitting on Bet Online, and you know,
I'm only going up.
Right, and I'm almost tempted to jump on board, man, if I can ride that out some, because I think, you know, I know you see a finish here, but for me, I think this fight probably goes to decision at a good clip, and I really like Viviane's chances to win a round or two early. I think if I could get plus 190 later in the fight, I just don't think that's going to be possible. I think the lines could flip after round 1 or round 2 when we see Vivi have a little success with her wrestling, with her strength upside. Yeah, and then at the end of the day, man, it's a women's MMA fight, you know, that's super, super close between two girls. You know, the one here, and Vivi has so much bigger pop on her shots and things as well. I've seen her get dropped with a big shot against KGB Lee and still work herself back into the fight. I know she's going to fight for my dollar at plus 192, and if she does go out there and lose a decision to Alexa Grasso, I don't think it's 50-45. I definitely think she steals a round or two. I think she's going to cover the price tag. So I think there's some value sitting on Vivi's money line right now.
For my prop to watch, I am picking Jonathan Martinez by TKO. I think this is a bad move for Cub this late in his career, man. I think that he's always had trouble with the body shots. Jonathan Martinez, the teep game, the kicking game in general. I think that he's going to mix it up well and often to the body, and I think that that's going to be a big problem for Cub Swanson. So whether he hits him enough to where he's thinking about it and then sneaks in a hide kick, or just finishes them with a similar kick to Giga Chikadze, I do think that Jonathan Martinez is primed to get a finish here. It's just a matter of if he wants that finish.
I like your read, man. I do see where you're coming from. Prop, I'm going to take Alonzo Minifield. Misha Serkinov doesn't go the distance. BetOnline's hanging out there at minus 260, which is like 100 points better than what I've seen at other places. And honestly, I line that about a minus 360 or minus 400. I think north of 75%, these guys don't see the judges. I see people hitting the under 1.5 very confidently, making me even more confident in my read here that we don't see the scorecards. Combined 6 times between the guys, that's it. That's 6 times they've seen the scorecards in the past. Misha, at this stage of his career, he's already tried moving weight classes, dropped down, now he's back up. The guy has not looked good as of late, and he doesn't look good taking big shots. And outside of that, if he can avoid the big shot, Misha might be the better fighter of the two, honestly. I think he's superior clearly on the mat. And if you give your backup to guys like William Knight, Misha Serkinov gets that. I think Misha Serkinov can finish that fight. And the longer it fight goes, the more grappling involved, the more Alonzo swinging at air. I think that submission for Misha, the higher upside as that fight goes on. But there is always a world where Alonzo comes out there and just lands the big bomb and run. He's way too fast. He's too athletic, too explosive. And with one shot, Misha just wants out of there at his age. So, I'm not too confident on the Misha side, but I'm very confident on the finishing upside for both of these guys. So minus 260, fight doesn't go the distance. Hit it straight. Very good parlay piece, I think.
Nice. For my best bet, I'm taking Jonathan Martinez. I'm triple dipping on this fight. I think that this is just, I think this is the farewell of Cub Swanson. The final straw. Cub's trying his best to revamp his career, and for whatever reason, he's trying to drop this weight class. It's not the right move. Jonathan Martinez, stylistically, I think that he's a problem for him with the kicking game. I've kind of already explained it, and I do think that sitting at minus 200, I think that he's a great bet here.
Nice. Hey, if you got a read, might as well hit it. Mm-hmm. Best bet for me, I'm going to go Dusko Todorovic, man. I love a good old chance to fade Jordan Wright. I think Jordan Wright is as bottom of the barrel as it gets in the UFC. But I tell you all the time, there's not a guy that I respect more than Jordan, because he's as killed as be killed as anybody I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. He is taking you out in round 1, or he is going out dying trying. But the gas tank after 2 minutes depletes so bad, he wastes it throwing spinning attacks and just trying to get you out of there. And against Marc-Andre Barriot, he even tried to wrestle Marc-Andre because that's his weakness. Didn't look good, man. I think Dusko has all the advantages here. He's a better traditional striker, even though he has his hands down. I think his hands are a whole lot faster. I think he's got a better gas tank, 100%. We've seen him go 15 rounds with RoboCop, which seems to be a hard task for anybody here recently, And I think he's got a much, much better wrestling game. Probably the biggest advantage on this fight, and could probably take him down and get Jordan Wright out of there. The guy's much more durable. I see him taking shots from Punahele and still trying to get back to his feet, just stumbling around. And I think it would probably, Puna would probably catch criminal charges if he punched Jordan Wright, because Jordan Wright's not getting up from that one. I don't like the chin that he has. I don't like the heart that he has. Everyone's all over the under 1.5 here, which I absolutely agree with. I've hit as well as, I guess you could call it a hedge, as if Jordan Wright wins, but Dusko's going to get him out of there, man.
All right, time for our quick pick section of the podcast. We start off in the welterweight division with Mike Jackson taking on Pete Rodriguez. I will be taking Pete Rodriguez here.
I can't believe this is actually a UFC fight. Yeah, I think Pete Rodriguez is going to find the knockout. CJ Vergara taking on Tatsuro Taira at men's flyweight. All over Taira, man. I think he gets the back, finds the rear naked choke early.
I'm also on Taira there. Moving on, we go to the strawweight division where we see Piero Rodriguez taking on Sam Page Hughes. I've like slowly become a fan of Sam Hughes. Kind of was not a believer in her at all, but she will fight for your money. She was almost my dog of the week, but I do think that Rodriguez is going to get the win here.
Yeah, she's always going to fight for your money, and she's damn near always going to be the underdog. So I'm on Pierre Rodriguez. I think she's a little bit better than Sam Hughes is. Joe Anderson Brito taking on short notice replacement Lucas Alexander. I haven't dug too deep into it. I know the line's pretty wide, but I am going to take Joe Anderson Brito to take this one.
It seems like maybe a little bit of an overcorrection. Brito coming off that huge KO win. I think that the line's a little bit wide, but I do side him. Moving on to the middleweight division, we have Nick Maximov taking on Jacob Malkoun. I've made my cases for Jacob Malkoun, but ultimately I'm going to be leaning Nick Maximov here. I think it's going to be a really close and really competitive fight.
Yeah, I'm on the Maximov side as well, but I think you win it by decision, probably very close decision. Sunsao versus Victor Henry. If a Sunsao was not on a 4-fight losing streak at 40 years old and was just another top 15 bantamweight at plus 300, maybe. But I'm going to go with Victor Henry here.
Yeah, I think the line's wide, but I'll also lean Victor Henry here. Moving on, we go to the bantamweight division where we see Mana Martinez versus Brandon Davis. I am not a huge believer in Mana Martinez. I hate that I have to lay juice on him to play him, but I am going to pick him here. Brandon Davis been on pretty bad skid. I do kind of lean Martinez here.
Yeah, man. With Martinez, his first two showings, or first two of his three I think he's had in the UFC. Coach passed away before the first one, and then you get a dominating wrestler like Ronnie Lawrence that gives you no space. I think we got a guy in Brandon Davis who's going to stand in front of him, let him get that boxing going. Martinez should find the KO. Misha Serkinov, Alonzo Minifield. Both guys got the finishing upside, but I think I'm going to go with the guy I think has it earlier in the fight in Alonzo Minifield.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. Misha's making too many moves late in his career. I'll lean Alonzo as well. Moving down to the middleweight division, we have Dusko Todorovic versus Jordan Wright. Cheering for Wright. I think Todorovic will win though.
Yeah, I got Todorovic. Hopefully cash that best bet ticket for us. Askarov versus Royval, my fight of the night. I am going to side with the wrestling of Askarov.
Same. Not happy about it, but it's same. Moving on to the co-main event, Jonathan Martinez versus Cub Swanson. Martinez has become my lock of the card, and so I'm definitely going with him.
You make a compelling case for him, man. You really do, and it's like I see that teep in that body, but I think Cub's got one last good run in him to hang with the young boys, so I'm going to go with Cub Swanson here. And in the main event, Alexa Grasso versus Viviane. It's kind of like your bet with Malkoun, you know? It's like I see some value on Viviane, but what do I really think deep down in my gut's going to happen? I think Grasso's going to win a really kind of tightly tested concision. Probably takes the last 3 rounds.
I like Grasso here pretty comfortably, but like I said, I'm kind of on that under. I think one of these girls are going to drop, and they both have finishing upside. I just think it might take longer than 3 rounds for them to actually prove that.
Nice. 12 fights total, man, and another little earlier fight card for us this week, which is really nice. UFC 280 next week. Can't wait to break these fights down for you guys. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Peace.